Welcome, special education teachers. My name's Amanda, and I'm the blogger and TPTer behind the Primary Gal. In this video, I'll be sharing 7 quick and simple things that you can do every single day in your small reading groups. For me, these are routines that we do day in and day out, or maybe there are 2 days a week in which we complete that routine, but it's just integrated into what we do every single week. The first thing that we do every single day is work on blending words. So I have a blending board where I use letter cards such as this to spell out different words. Sometimes they're real words, sometimes they're nonsense words. And that really helps my students to be able to understand how to stretch out words. Typically, we'll stretch out a word and we give a thumbs up if it's correct, a thumbs down if it's incorrect. We might do anywhere from 3 to 10, maybe even 12 or 15 words, depending on the ability of the students, the amount of time that we have. If it's something that we've been busy and neglected on other days, we might make up for it by doing a few extra words. After that, I use the same cards or whatever the last word was that we spelled, and we'll use that to transition into our spelling words for the week. So for this particular group, we were working on L blends. So we had the word slap, and then I gave them their letter tiles and I asked them to change one letter and spell the word clap. So as you can see, they can still see my word slap, and then they use their letter tiles to create their own. What I do for this activity is I have different colored Ziploc bags, which is actually a Walmart brand or a Great Value brand, where they have red, yellow, blue, and green. So for me, that represents different groups, and we just use those colors and we pass out our blue bags or pass out our green bags, and in those we'll have all of the letters that are needed for spelling particular word lists. After we work on manipulating sounds, then we move into our leveled reader. Inside our leveled reader, I feel like it's very important to be practicing looking for sight words, being on a sight word hunt. So we use markers, we do a lot of color coding, and we use our blue markers to highlight our sight words. So what we do is we stretch out our arms to make it multi-sensory, and we are tapping those words. So on this particular page, the very first sight word was see. So before doing this together, I would have said, all right, my friends, what is that first word? Does anybody know that word? I would see if they do or if they don't. Sometimes it depends on how long we've been reviewing that particular sight word. And I say, that word is see. Let's spell it together. Ready? S-E-E. See, and we're tapping our arm 3 times, see, and then we would hunt for the word see. I often find that some students are really great at memorizing flashcards, but they have no idea what those same words are when they see it in the text. So I really like to have a balance where we're practicing it where they just see it, but also where they're hunting for it and they're finding it. Later, whenever we're actually reading, then if we see, oh, this is a blue word, oh, that means it's one that I should just memorize. This is one we tap on our arms, and it gives the kids a little something to go with. If we come across a blue word and they're not picking it up or they're not remembering it, usually I might say S-E-E. And many times they're like, oh, it's C, because it kind of appeals to that linguistic learner, somebody who really relies on some of those auditory skills. I also believe that every day we should be echo reading. So for our students in special education, reading is hard for them. For many of them, that's why they qualified for extra help and support. So for me, I like to spend time echo reading. If you have read anything about dyslexia or even other reading disabilities, tracking is something that is very, very hard for students with dyslexia and other reading disabilities. By echo reading, it gives students the opportunity to just work on tracking, just work on listening to what somebody's saying and repeating it back with fluency. So for me, I am a big believer in giving candy in my small groups. If that is not you, you might have to find something else. But my students know when we're working on our first smiley face in our book, we're just working on following along. And they might get an M&M or two or a Skittle or two just by doing their best to put their finger, or sometimes if I allow them to have fun pointers, just by following along and doing their best to keep their finger right along with the text. And for me, echo reading is the best way to do that. So for this, I read it sentence by sentence, and I read and then I pause. I read and then I pause. And I think it's a great habit to allow your students to hear some of those complicated words before it's their turn to read it, or before you're asking them to do things independently with that text. And I also think that it's just a good habit to let them hear what the words are, to hear fluent reading. Many of our students aren't the greatest at reading on their own, but they can fully understand and answer questions about a passage that you've read aloud to them. So for me, this kills many birds with one stone. Do an echo reading every day. I also believe that we should do a cloze reading. And notice this cloze has a Z, and that is on purpose. That's not a typo. If you're wondering what the difference between a close with an S and a cloze reading, cloze is often a way that we can allow reading to happen a bit faster, but still keep students accountable and reading a portion of the words. So where this student is pointing, what I had done when we had read that is I had read, "Where is Dot?" Tom said, "Dot, Dot. I cannot see you. Where is," and I pause. If students have been following along, they are ready to read that word. Or with this particular example, it's a stretchable word. It's in green. So maybe they don't know the word, but I stopped there for a reason. I stopped there because I want to see, can they remember that word? Can we figure out what that word is? So I might also pause on a sight word. Maybe it's not even a sight word that's highlighted in blue. Maybe it's a sight word we did yesterday, like is. Is a common sight word in the red level, and so we might pause on the word is to see if they can remember some of those things. So cloze reading is something that I love because I can quickly cover some of that passage, and I can stop several times, or I can stop just a couple of times depending on what our time allows. But it really keeps those students, again, tracking as we read, and it gives them a purpose. Oh, she's going to stop, and I better be ready. And again, I'm not afraid to give some Skittles or M&Ms to those who are really following along, and I make sure that they know that, so that they're well trained that that little finger should be tapping along or following along as we're reading. The next strategy that I think should be used every single day, or the next routine, is fluency passages. So as I've said many times, whether you're following my blog or following emails or social media, I really thought my students were going to hate me when I asked them to do a fluency check. But what I discovered is all kids like to beat their previous goal. Even if they didn't really read 9 words 100% on their own, it still gives them some confidence. It makes them realize, oh, look at that word in the second row. I didn't know N-A-M-E-D. I better ask my teacher that. I don't know what that word is. So it gives students a really good look at where they stand. What can they do? And for mine, I really found that it built a lot of confidence, far more than I ever thought they would be able to do. Because for them, 9 words the first time. Oh, I got 13. Wow, it went up. And that's all they need to keep going and keep going. What I do is each day, for the first reading, I might sit with the first student at my table. For the second reading, I sit and watch the second student at my table. For the third reading, I'll watch the third student at my table. The next day when we do fluency, the fourth person at my table will be watched when we do our first reading, and I write my scores in either a pen or a marker. That way I know, or their classroom teachers know when they take their books back, that I actually sat there and listened to them read 10 words, 13 words, whatever. And what I discovered is my numbers were not far off from theirs. I expected a lot of, oh, I got 18 words, Mrs. Wilk. And then when I assess them, they get 10. But really, because they know I'm checking, they're doing their best to be honest. And that I loved it. And I've had wonderful results from doing fluency passages. I also find that many of my students, both with like mild cognitive disabilities and dyslexia, really struggle to rhyme words. They also struggle to find words with the same beginning sound or ending sound. So I just bought a set of flashcards and we go through these every day, or at least every day that we have time. So if we're also running short on time, we do this in the hallway as we're walking back. For example, I would say, all right, my friends, I have the word ball. Can anybody think of another word that rhymes with ball? I also might say, could anybody think of a word that starts with b, like ball? And so we practice some of those things because rhyming and beginning sounds and understanding what the same vowel sound in the middle, it's all very confusing for our students. And I think it's something that we need to practice all the time. Thank you so much for watching this video on my 7 routines that I feel are so important for our students to have every single day in their small reading groups.